Who exactly was Charles Luciano? Brother, today we're talking about a man who didn't just join the American Mafia. He reshaped it, rebuilt it, and turned it into something the world had never seen before. His name was Charles Lucky Luciano, and even today, people call him the father of modern organized crime. But what's the real truth behind the legend? Because Luciano wasn't born a king, or a prince, or a natural ruler. He was just a poor, struggling kid from a tiny Sicilian town called Lerca Fritti, living through hardship, poverty, and hopelessness. That's where his story began, a child thrown into a new world. In 1906, when Luciano was only 9 years old, his family packed up everything they owned, which honestly wasn't much, and moved to New York City, hoping for a better future. They didn't find comfort. They didn't find success. They found ghettos, overcrowded streets, and neighborhoods controlled by violence and desperation. The New York that young Luciano grew up in wasn't the New York of lights and skyscrapers that we know today. It was a battlefield, a place where immigrants had to fight every single day just to survive. And for a kid like him, this world became his real school. He learned fast. He learned that the streets respect power, not kindness. He learned that friends are armor and enemies are a test. He learned that if you want to rise, you must build your own way up, step by step, inch by inch. The first step into the underworld. By the time he turned 14, Luciano had already decided that school wasn't going to save his life. Books couldn't protect him. Teachers couldn't feed his family. And a normal job, that wasn't even an option where he lived. So he dropped out and he entered the world. That would eventually make him a legend. The streets. He joined a small street gang. And immediately, something became clear. Luciano wasn't like the other kids. Most boys join gangs for excitement, or protection, or money. But Luciano, he joined with a purpose. He was clever, fearless, and completely unafraid to bend the rules, break the rules, or create new rules, if those rules would take him one step higher. This wasn't just a boy trying to survive. This was a boy thinking like a leader long before he ever became one. The birth of Lucky, back then his name was still Salvatore Lucania, just a regular immigrant boy, lost in the chaos of New York. But slowly, very slowly, through fights, alliances, hustles, and street deals, he started to transform. He wasn't just learning crime. He was learning strategy. He understood people. He understood money. He understood fear. And most importantly, he understood opportunity. And in the world of crime, someone who can see opportunity, where others only see danger, is destined to rise. It wasn't long before people around him stopped seeing him as Salvatore, the poor Sicilian immigrant kid, and started recognizing him as Charles Lucky Luciano. The nickname Lucky came from the streets. Some say it was because he survived attacks. Some say it was because of his clever escapes. Others say he simply made his own luck. But whatever the reason, the name fit him perfectly, because this was the moment when the boy disappeared, and the legend began. A storm was coming. By his late teens, Luciano was already mixing with bigger gangs, learning bigger operations, and making powerful contacts, from hustlers and smugglers to future mafia giants like Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel. And one thing was becoming crystal clear. Luciano was not meant to be a follower. He thought differently. He moved differently. He dreamed differently. He didn't want a small piece of the street. He wanted the whole system. And soon, he would rebuild that system from the ground up in a way no one had ever imagined. This is where the real story of Charles Lucky Luciano truly begins. In the beginning, Luciano wasn't some organized crime genius or a mastermind sitting in a big office making big decisions. He started exactly where every hustler on the street starts. Dirty, dangerous, low-level crime. He tried drug trafficking. He tried gambling rackets. He even got into robbery and petty extortion. He tested every corner of the underworld, searching for the path that would take him to real power. But his journey truly began. His real rise when he crossed paths with three men who would change mafia history forever. Meyer Lansky, Bugsy Siegel, Frank Costello. These weren't ordinary gangsters. They were smart, sharp, and each of them understood money strategy and survival almost as well as Luciano did. But here's the thing. They didn't follow Luciano because he was strong. They didn't follow him because he was fearless. They followed him because of the way he thought. Most gangsters chase power. Lucky chased business. He looked at crime the way a CEO looks at companies. He didn't want temporary money. He wanted systems, networks, and long-term control. And that mindset would make him one of the most influential crime figures America had ever seen. Prohibition, the perfect storm. The 1920s in America were a completely different world. A world fueled by jazz, nightlife, underground bars, and an unexpected government decision. That changed everything. Prohibition. The government banned alcohol. No beer, no wine, no whiskey. But guess what? People didn't stop drinking. They just stopped drinking legally. Demand skyrocketed. Supply became risky. And that risk created a gold mine for every gangster smart enough to see the opportunity. And Luciano, he didn't just see the opportunity. He saw the map of the future. Bootlegging, illegal alcohol smuggling, became the biggest business in the country. Luciano jumped in fast. Not recklessly, but strategically. He built connections with smugglers, owners of secret bars called speakeasies, dock workers, police informants, anyone who could help the business run smoothly. And little by little, he climbed higher. Everything changed when he became the right-hand man of New York's most powerful mafia boss at that time, Giuseppe Joe the Boss Masuria. Masuria ruled through fear. He trusted no one. He controlled everything. And yet, somehow, Luciano managed to get close to him, closer than anyone else. Luciano was young, ambitious, and brilliant. He handled bootlegging routes, managed deals, and built alliances Masuria never even knew existed. But Luciano was also watching, learning, and studying the flaws in the old mafia system. And those flaws were massive. A new vision, crime as a corporation. Back then, the mafia was divided by bloodlines. Sicilians only worked with Sicilians. Neapolitans worked with their own. Jewish gangs and Irish mobs were seen as outsiders. And because of this division, wars kept breaking out. Money was lost. Power was wasted. Territories constantly shifted hands. But lucky Luciano, he didn't care about ethnic pride. He cared about profit. His thinking was radical. Why fight over ethnicity when we can all make money together? This wasn't just a different idea. It was a revolution. He saw the mafia not as a family feud, but as a business empire waiting to be built. And that mindset shook the entire New York underworld from the inside. While older mafia bosses kept fighting old wars, Luciano was planning the future. While they argued about tradition, he was creating networks. While they fought for territory, he was building a structure that could control the entire city. He wasn't thinking like a street thug. He was thinking like a businessman, a criminal visionary. His alliance with Lansky, Siegel, and Costello wasn't just friendship, it was strategy. Together, they formed a multi-ethnic crime syndicate. Long before the world understood what that meant, they combined Sicilian discipline, Jewish financial genius, and American street power into one unstoppable force. This was the moment the old mafia began to crack, and a new era began to rise. And at the center of that rise was one name, Charles Lucky Luciano. America's criminal underworld was on fire. A brutal conflict had erupted, a war so violent, so chaotic, that it carved its name into mafia history forever. It was called the Castellamarese War. On one side stood Joe the Boss Masuria, the long-established ruler of New York's Italian mafia world, a man who believed power came only through fear, control, and old traditions. On the other side was Salvatore Maranzano, a cold, calculating Sicilian, leading a rival faction from Castellamare del Golfo. He wanted to take everything Masuria owned. For 2 long years, these two titans battled for dominance. Hitmen roamed the streets. Bodies dropped on sidewalks. Cars exploded. Allegiances shifted overnight. And in the middle of this deadly storm stood one man observing everything quietly, Charles Lucky Luciano, the vision that changed everything. Luciano was Masuria's right-hand man, but unlike his boss, he wasn't blind. He looked at the war and saw the truth. There's no profit in this, no winner, only funerals. The mafia was tearing itself apart over old grudges and ancient rules. That made no sense in modern America. Luciano realized something bold, something no one else dared to even imagine. To rebuild the mafia, he first had to destroy its leaders. Not one of them, both of them, Masuria and Maranzano, had to be removed. This wasn't rebellion. It was strategy. The kind of strategy only Luciano could pull off. The betrayal of Joe Masuria. The first target was the man who had once trusted him, Joe the Boss Masuria, and the plan was pure brilliance. One afternoon, Masuria was playing cards in a quiet Coney Island restaurant. Luciano sat with him, chatting, laughing, acting loyal as always. Then suddenly, Luciano stood up casually and said he needed to use the washroom. That was the signal. The moment Lucky stepped outside, the door swung open, and 3 shadows entered the restaurant. Meyer Lansky, Bugsy Siegel, Arthur Flegenheimer, better known as Dutch Schultz's top gunmen. These weren't ordinary killers. These were Luciano's closest allies, handpicked because they were fast, ruthless, and completely reliable. Without hesitation, they surrounded Masuria where he sat and opened fire. Bullets tore through the air. Masuria didn't even have time to stand up. He collapsed over the poker table as cards and shell casings mixed with blood on the wooden floor. Just like that, boss down. War changed, but the storm wasn't over. Not yet. The fall of Salvatore Maranzano. With Masuria gone, Maranzano emerged victorious in the war. And what did he do? He declared himself the Capo di Tutti Capi, the boss of all bosses, the supreme ruler of the mafia, and he placed Luciano as his number 2, his second in command. But Maranzano was not stupid. He knew Luciano's rise was dangerous. He knew Lucky was too smart, too ambitious, too influential. So in secret, Maranzano made a deadly plan. Kill Luciano before he becomes unstoppable. But Lucky had ears everywhere. Rumors traveled fast. A warning reached him before the trap could be set. And once he knew, he didn't hesitate. If Maranzano wanted him dead, the old Don had to go first. The perfect assassination. Luciano didn't send Italian killers. He didn't send anyone Maranzano expected. He sent 4 Jewish hitmen, men Maranzano had never seen before, because the old Sicilian mafia never worked with outsiders. But Luciano wasn't bound by those rules. These hitmen disguised themselves as FBI agents, badges, suits, everything perfectly staged. They walked right past the guards and entered Maranzano's office in the New York Central Building. Maranzano stood up confused. He thought this was a federal raid, until one of the men grabbed him, and the knives came out. Shot, stabbed, cut down, before he could even scream for help. In less than a minute, Salvatore Maranzano, the self-proclaimed boss of all bosses, lay dead on the floor. The war was over. The old world was gone, and a new world was about to be born. The moment Luciano took control, with both Masuria and Maranzano gone, the entire American mafia was suddenly without a leader. No boss, no hierarchy, no structure. And into that vacuum stepped one man, Charles Lucky Luciano. This moment was the exact point in history when Luciano gained full control over the United States mafia system, not by luck, not by chance, but by planning, intelligence, and a vision far greater. than anyone before him. After the fall of Salvatore Maranzano, something happened that the world had never seen before. For the first time in American history, the entire mafia world had no supreme boss, no dictator, no single man controlling everything. And into that empty space stepped one man with a vision, Charles Lucky Luciano. He didn't want to rule like a king. He didn't want to be another tyrant like Masuria or Maranzano. He wanted to rebuild the mafia, transform it, and turn crime into an organized industry. And that's exactly what he did. What Luciano built after Maranzano's death was so revolutionary that even today, decades later, the same structure still exists in America. Let's break down exactly what he created and why the world calls him the father of modern organized crime. 1. The creation of 5 families. The first thing Luciano did was something no one had the courage to do before. He divided New York, the mafia's biggest battlefield, into 5 powerful families. Not one big empire, not scattered small gangs. 5 stable, organized families that would run the city together. These families were the Luciano family, later renamed the Genovese family, the Genovese family, under Vito Genovese after Luciano, the Bonanno family, the Colombo family, the Gambino family. Each family had its own structure, not chaos, not confusion, but a clear hierarchy. Boss, the head of the family. Underboss, the second in command. Consigliere, the advisor, strategist, and mediator. This system prevented power struggles, reduced internal wars, and made each family operate like a professional organization. With this one move, Luciano turned the mafia from a violent mess into something structured, stable, and incredibly profitable. 2. The commission, the mafia's parliament. But the true genius of Luciano wasn't just dividing New York. It was creating the commission. Imagine a parliament, a board of directors, a national council of crime families. That's what the commission was. Every major mafia family sent their top leaders to sit in this council. They held meetings, solved disputes, controlled territories, and approved major business operations. If a family wanted to start a war, they needed permission from the commission. If they wanted to expand into another city, they had to present their case. For the first time ever, the mafia had a governing body, with rules, votes, and decisions. This stopped unnecessary wars, protected business interests, and brought peace to the criminal underworld. And guess what? This same commission still exists today. That's how powerful Luciano's system was. 3. A multi-ethnic criminal alliance. The old mafia leaders were obsessed with Sicilian bloodlines. They believed only Italians could join the mafia and only pure Sicilians could run it. Luciano destroyed that rule in a single stroke. Why? Because he didn't care about tradition. He cared about profit. So he did something no one before him dared to do. He built alliances with Jewish gangs and Irish mobs, creating a massive, multi-ethnic business network. His closest partners were Meyer Lansky, Jewish mastermind, Bugsy Siegel, Jewish enforcer, Frank Costello, Italian politician fixer. Together, this mix of cultures, skills, and brains created a criminal machine far stronger than the old ethnic mafia. Luciano knew that diversity wasn't a weakness, it was power, and that decision changed American crime forever. 4. Crime turned into a corporate empire. Before Luciano, organized crime was just thugs and guns. After Luciano, it became a business empire. He restructured every illegal industry, like a corporation: bootlegging, alcohol smuggling, prostitution rings, gambling operations, drug distribution, extortion rackets, labor unions manipulation, nightclubs and casinos. Everything had departments, managers, income systems, and partnerships. It wasn't random anymore. It was professional, efficient, organized. Luciano even introduced profit-sharing models. So families work together, instead of killing each other. Under his leadership, the mafia made more money than ever before. And this is the exact reason history calls him the father of modern organized crime. Because he didn't just run the mafia, he reinvented it. When the U.S. government realized how massive Lucky Luciano's criminal empire had become, they decided it was time to shut it down. Special Prosecutor Thomas Dewey, one of the toughest law enforcement figures of that era, launched a relentless campaign against him. And in 1936, Dewey finally succeeded. Luciano was arrested on charges of running one of the largest prostitution rackets in America. The trial became national news, and the judge gave him a brutal sentence, 30 to 50 years in prison. For the first time, it looked like Lucky Luciano's empire had collapsed. But Lucky wasn't an ordinary criminal. Even behind bars, he found a way to turn power into opportunity. World War II, Lucky's unexpected comeback. During World War II, the U.S. Navy faced a scary problem. German spies and saboteurs were targeting New York ports, especially the docks where military supplies were stored. Security was failing. The government was desperate. And that's when someone suggested a wild idea. Ask the mafia for help. Luciano still controlled deep connections inside the docks, unions, fishermen, and local gangs. His network was more powerful than the government's reach. So an agreement was made. Luciano would use his mafia influence to keep all East Coast ports safe from German interference. And in return, the government would consider reducing his sentence. Luciano delivered exactly what they needed. The docks remained secure. No sabotage, no explosions, no disruption. And as promised, his prison time was cut short. Deported, but still in control. In 1946, Luciano was released from prison, but there was a condition. He was permanently deported from the United States. He was put on a ship and sent back to Italy, the country he left as a child. Most criminals disappear after deportation, but not Lucky. From Italy, he rebuilt himself. He created new routes, new partners, new operations. He communicated through coded messages, trusted men, and secret meetings. And somehow, he still controlled parts of the American underworld from thousands of miles away. The Havana Conference, Luciano's biggest move. By the late 1940s, Luciano wasn't just influential, he was global. His power reached United States, Italy, Cuba, France, South America. And in 1946, he made a legendary move. He organized the Havana Conference, the largest mafia meeting in history. Mafia bosses from all across the U.S. and Europe gathered in Cuba. Why? To discuss casinos, drug routes, investments, and international expansion. Every major decision passed through Lucky. Even if he wasn't physically in America, his mind, his rules, and his system still ran the entire underworld. The final days. Throughout the 1950s, Luciano remained a major force in organized crime, even as governments kept trying to track, limit, or restrain him. But age was catching up. On January 26, 1962, at the Naples airport, Luciano collapsed from a heart attack and died instantly. The world saw the end of man, but not the end of his influence. Legacy, a system that survived him. Even after his death, Lucky Luciano's blueprint for organized crime continued exactly as he designed it. The 5 families he established, still the backbone of New York's mafia. The commission he founded, still the central governing body for decades. The multi-ethnic partnerships he created, they became the foundation of modern criminal business networks. Luciano didn't just join organized crime. He rebuilt it. He restructured it. He re-engineered it like a corporation. And that's why history remembers him with a title no one else has ever earned. The father of modern organized crime. Ending line. Charles Lucky, Luciano wasn't just a gangster. He was a visionary strategist. A man with ambition, brutality, and intelligence operating at the highest level. If the mafia were a corporation and the underworld were a company, there would be only one CEO, Lucky Luciano.